First of all, let me welcome you all to the first art lesson stream that I've done since bloody ages ago. Today we're actually going to be doing a little bit of kind of an introductory course, nothing too major. We're not going to be covering too many things. Essentially, I'm going to bring up 4 different topics and we're going to cover what the hell they all mean and all that other such. But today's essentially just going to be dealing with the different tools you can use, the use of gestures as warm-ups, and many other effective things that these things can do for you, how ideology actually works when it comes to art and how it can actually affect both your art style and the things that influence you, and the concept of acceptance of all types of mediums around you, especially the acceptance of other artists and how to learn from them. So today's going to be a really chill lesson. The way these courses are going to work is I'm going to try and introduce at least 4 different topics every lesson. The lessons might not be the longest, but they're also meant to basically not overwhelm you all with a lot of different details all at once. I'm going to try and make these at least a weekly thing. If I can actually find a time period throughout the week to do them, I will probably be hosting them up at like sometime then, because I'm noticing that these are going to probably be shorter lessons than what I used to do. But I'm going to cover things up, and I'm going to, at the end of the actual stream, or rather the lesson itself, I'm going to propose you guys, I guess you can call it homework, but again, completely optional. You guys don't have to do any of them. Just things to actually help you guys out if you guys are interested in actually either learning a little bit of extra stuff with art or just taking that first step into the door. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. The first lesson we're going to actually be talking about is the concept of tools. And actually, you know what? Speaking of tools, and now that I actually have one that actually gives me these, let's use this. Today's lessons are basically tools. And yes, Daisy, I am recording these. These will actually be posted up on my Patreon. I will post a link to that close to the end of the lesson, as well as after the end of the stream. And I will also be posting up a link to that in my Twitter as well. Not to mention, at any given time, if any of you actually want a copy of these recordings, if you guys either don't know where to find them or anything, I'm going to be trying to edit them as well, and potentially even host them up on my YouTube page, so you can actually have multiple different ways of accessing them. But the raw recordings will be put on my Patreon, so anytime any of you want a copy of it or any of like that, then you have them right there for you to access. So, let's get started with the concept of tools. Now, this is going to sound kind of obvious, but tools are what you use to basically do your art. It could be either a typewriter if you're a writer, it could be a pencil for someone like me. But in truth, there are multiple different tools that you can actually use to actually help you out when it comes to artwork. And the main thing I can express with the concept of tools is just how important it is to experiment with them. For example, like you just saw here, I first started writing the actual word down here. My handwriting kind of sucks. But as you can see, I'm now using Clip Studio Paint, and it actually has a font feature, so I'm actually able to write things down. So at any given point, if I want to say something, I can just go here and say... And again, this is just me experimenting with the different things in my own tool sets. Now, what makes experimenting with your different tools rather important is that you don't know what medium you're going to end up loving until you take that first step in. It could be oils, acrylics, it could be watercolors, it could be colored pencils, it could be digital, it could even be just straight up pen and paper. But the thing is that makes it most important is that you have to be willing to experiment with it. And yes, Drazvin, you are correct. A pencil is a mighty and versatile tool for more than just drawing. It could be used for drafting, it could be used for writing, it could be used for many, many things. So truth be told, the universal tool is in fact the pencil. That's kind of scary, Daisy. But, with that said, for the lessons that I'm going to be showing you guys here, for what we're going to be doing, I'm mainly going to be covering things in a digital aspect, but, in truth, what I'm going to be teaching you guys here is just basic concepts that you could then improvise and take to whatever it is you wish to take it to. So, on with the main tools that we're going to be using today. Or rather, that I'm going to be mainly using for the majority of my course. I'm going to be using tools such as the pen, the eraser, a little bit of an actual softer pencil to basically do an underline sketch, a brush tool that basically I can use for either coloring or just technical shading, the art program itself, and also one tool that I love for the love of, and that would be magnification. Like, seriously, I love the magnification tool. If you guys are wondering how this would actually work in real life, magnification, just put it closer to your face. That was a horrible joke. I apologize. But that basically covers up the tools in itself. Pretty much, tools are what you make it. I know, thus why I just basically said, just grab it and put it closer to you, because not everyone has a magnifying glass, Speedy. But yes. In truth, tools are what you make of them. Always try and experiment with new mediums. If you don't have access to them, or even if you just can have a friend of yours that has them, and he's willing to let you use them, by all means use them. Experiment with them, have fun, see what you can do. You never really know what you can do until you basically take that first step forward. And speaking of taking a step forward, we're going to be going on to... We're going to essentially be going on to the topic of ideology. But let's see here. Oh, Speedy. Anyway. I'm going to ideology next, because this is actually something that I really do need to take into consideration. Not just me, but everyone here. And yeah, you're right, Daisy. Even for writing, there are classes to help people improve their hand coordinations. Sometimes it even goes as far as people not being able to ever really write correctly, simply on the grounds that their arm just does not fully cooperate with them. Well, on to the next thing, of course, which is the ideology behind drawing. Now, the thing about ideology is essentially how you perceive things in the world. Do you always view things in black and white? Is everything just right or wrong? Do you think there's actually different subtle shades between that white and black ground? If there's actually anything of the sort that comes into artwork, it's this. Most people view things rather in the box. So they just look at a... well, let's see here. They look at a little milk carton, and all they see is just the milk carton. But at the same time, if you're actually able to look at things and have a different idea of them, you can also use your perception, use your idea of actual creativity, I guess is the word I want to use here, and just twist that concept into something ever so different. For example, our little milk carton here, I can go easily in. Why did that suddenly pop out? I can easily go into the milk carton concept and say, okay, it's not so much a milk carton. And then from there, we can even turn a little paper milk carton into a building. And that's where the concept comes in for ideology. The ideology in art is that you are technically just taking what you're seeing and thinking of ways of how to basically spin it. And just how broad you're willing to think on the concept, or how narrow you want to think on the concept, will actually influence what you're trying to do. You can take concepts like the milk carton, you can take anything really, a milk carton, a book, a little tiny flimsy little card, a pin, a little sheet of paper, even your cell phone, a TV, anything. View them and be able to make and twist them into something else. But that all depends on your ideology, your creativity. And the main thing of ideology, and this is actually something that is very, very important, is you must never be afraid of accepting different ideologies. Not everything in the world is black and white, much like I explained. And in truth, for example, I just drew this here, and it still looks like a milk carton for all intents and purposes, but if you expand on it further, just by adding one next to the other, you start to see how different things can actually be. And this is the point that I'm getting across. your ideology, the things you view, the way you view things actually affect what you get. A good example of this is for, let's say, you know what, I'm just going to grab something random from here. Let's see, what can I instantly grab out of my own eye line? Yeah, you know what? Let's see this. What I currently have in my hand right now is a extendable eraser. Which I'm currently drawing for you guys since I don't have my webcam anymore. Let's look at this, for example. Very simple thing, nothing out of the norm. Push it down, the eraser comes out and becomes further. Push it back in, and the eraser retracts. Now, though this in itself is a very useful tool for using in art, you can then basically grab this and start twisting the concept around a little bit. For example, and that little eraser head actually suddenly became a very unusual submarine thing. I actually like the concept of that. Exactly. And in truth, that is actually things that can come to pass. You can make it into a boat, a race car, a submarine, a rocket launcher. You can make it into many different things, and that's actually why ideology is important. You can't just close yourself off into thinking, oh, it's this, and it'll always just be this. No. If you think of just that, you're going to be very, very limited. You need to be able to actually open yourself in a broader sense and be able to accept things that come on around you. And that's why ideology is very, very important. And with ideology comes another concept that I actually need to stress oh so much, and that is acceptance. Now, the reason why acceptance is very, very important when it comes to art is the fact that you're going to be viewing all of these things, and you're going to be viewing them in such a way that other people are probably going to be looking at you and wondering, okay, is this person escaping from a psycho ward, or is this person mentally healthy? I don't know how many times in my own personal experience I have literally designed things from just viewing nothing but random objects laying about, and then people wonder if I'm psychotic because I just came up with something either really complex or really simplistic out of just me looking at something for about 5 minutes and thinking, oh, that'll be neat if it does this. And Speedy, you point out a very good thing, and it's the accepting of your own artwork. And the thing about that is this. That statement in itself is a very, very double-ended statement. Most artists, be it writers, crafters, modelers, sculptors, everything of the sort, we are the most critical of our own work. And at times, we have to accept the fact that our criticism is at times unjust. I've had my own personal experience is that at times, like, in my own experience, pretty much, sometimes I look at some of the things that I do, and I'm just like, okay, this is crap, oh, this doesn't work, or oh, this is stupid. But I'll show this to someone else, and they love it. And that comes with a statement of itself. Accepting one's own artwork comes in the concept of understanding that, yes, this is my current level, no, I am not happy with it, but I'm using this to be able to improve. And that's where that statement should be. Now, the reason why it's a very double-ended statement, Speedy, is that it could also at times just be incorporated by the artist into thinking, oh, what I do is not good enough, and I won't improve. And that's where you need to kind of step away from. You always improve the more you draw. And truth be told, the more you go at it, the better you're going to become. As the statement always goes, practice does make perfect. So, just coming to the terms of thinking, oh, I can never improve, is harming yourself more than it is actually helping you. Thank you. I'm glad you liked that one. But, getting back on topic here, the key thing about acceptance is the fact that you're going to always see things in a very broad statement. And sometimes you're going to come across artists who you're looking at and you're like, oh, I can never be as good as them. And you see, that's where the double-ended part of the actual statement of acceptance comes in. Okay, it's alright if you see this artist and you suddenly think you're not going to be able to become better than them. That's not a problem at all. Sometimes one never reaches their level, sometimes more than others, they go beyond their own expectations without even noticing. And the point behind it is because as artists, we don't just conform to one singular style. We're always adapting, we're always changing, and we're always learning. And that's the key point of it. Instead of looking at another artist and just trying to accept the fact of, oh, I'm never going to be as good as them, accept the fact that they are doing something different, and then try and incorporate what they're doing different into what you do. Learn from them and grab from what they can. And then from there, you're going to not only gain an extended amount of ideology from them, because you're now learning new things you didn't even know possible from them, but you've also begun accepting new traits into you. You're essentially accepting that, okay, I couldn't do this before like this, but now I can do it like this. All of these ideas, all of these concepts that I'm telling you right now, are essentially all centered around the point of trying to always play with different mediums, to always try and experiment with different ways of doing something. If you can't draw a straight line by doing this, then grab something, grab a pencil, grab a stencil, grab something, and then draw the line like that. And you'll slowly start coming to the realization that you can draw using different mediums. You can draw a straighter line, you can draw a better line, or even come to a point where you can do something as complex as drawing an entire cityscape to essentially drawing a single person's hand and grabbing that concept in such a way that most people will look at you and say you're a genius, others would think you're a madman. But in truth, it all just comes down to how you accept the way of doing it. And accepting the way that there's no right or wrong way of doing it. And see, artist, you actually make a very, very good point. And that's actually something that I will be incorporating into this lesson, and that's the concept of patience. And in truth, not everyone has the time and the patience to actually get better at art, or to even start. And in truth, it's a give and take. Because patience works in many different ways, and some artists have developed styles to basically progress themselves to the point where they don't even use patience to draw. They use their frustration. They use many different things. There have been artists who essentially, they actually take a blank canvas, a giant brush, and multiple different cans of paint, and they do creative and weird artwork, but they do it by just simply expressing themselves by either yelling and throwing paint at the canvas, or even by just randomly swinging at the canvas in such ways because they just feel like expressing certain things. And that's actually the key point of art, and patience in itself plays a massive role, because to learn the finer arts, to learn like the more traditional sense of art, i.e. realism, still lives, and all that other stuff, yes, there is an aspect of patience that go into it, but it isn't the ultimate defining factor. And in truth, you may start now thinking that, oh, I can't draw, and I'm not going to have the patience to get better at it. But in truth, to get better at it, all you really need to devote to it in a day-to-day basis is maybe no more than 10 minutes. Just doing a simple little doodle, like simply just grabbing a pencil and paper and just drawing this. Something like this. You'll start like this, and then slowly become more used to it to the point where you can draw this by not even thinking. To the point where you can actually start seeing it without even having to draw it. And then after a little bit of time, you actually start getting better and better and better. And just spending those little 10 minutes. And there you go. You can actually go and create origami in that same sense. And that's the point, see, artists, is the fact that artists don't just fall under singular art. I can basically draw this, I can turn this into something like this, for example, just by basically thinking a little bit out of the box. And that's the thing about it, is that sometimes it's not always just, oh, I'm going to be using all the tools that I can. Sometimes it's easy as just basically having a thing there and just letting your hands do what they need to do. Patience plays a very, very big role in it. And in truth, the thing about patience isn't so much that you think you don't have the time or just don't have the ability to do it. It's more just having the patience to try it. Just trying it once and seeing if you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, then it works. And that's kind of where patience comes in. And with that same concept, it comes with the acceptance of it. For example, one person can accept that they can never really draw, but at the same time, they grab a piece of clay and they suddenly realize that they can sculpt masterpieces. They've discovered their own different medium, and they've created their own art. And that's kind of where the thing comes in. You guys are going to always come across people who are going to always say, it's like, oh, this isn't art, oh, that isn't art, oh, that looks stupid, or oh, this or that, and they're always going to give you multiple different excuses and all this other stuff. In truth, there is no right and wrong in the art world. Just the same way that most people would consider this an art piece, there are people who would consider things like having things like this on a canvas as art. And you know what? It happens. Most people do that. And they consider those things masterpieces. And again, it all just depends on the emotion you put into it. your ideas behind it, how well you accepted the mediums and have been able to actually incorporate the mediums and twist them into such merits, and the patience to try. So, with these long-winded explanations and all this aside, I guess it can come into the main part of what this lesson today is actually all about. And it's the idea of incorporating everything into something and kind of melding it together into something new. Also, hello Blizzult, and welcome to the lesson. So, we've already covered the tools one can use, the ideology and how ideas can affect and influence you in many ways, the acceptance of ideas, the acceptance of different artists' art styles, and the acceptance of basically everything all around you as a potential influence to you and everything all this other, as well as the reasoning behind patience as an actual, I guess, not so much tool, but I guess more as an aspect of what can and cannot harm you in terms of the art world. I know that this so far has been rather shaky on the explanation part. This is again the first lesson, so this one is more just me explaining different concepts and ideas. But for the final part of this lesson today, welcome back, Daisy. For the final part of this lesson today, I'm actually going to give you guys probably one of the most helpful tools you can ever have as an artist. And this can be incorporated into many different styles. It could be incorporated into someone who does origami, someone who sculpts, someone who does clay work. It could be incorporated into modelers. It could even be incorporated into just people who write, and even those of us who draw. And those are gestures. Gestures in themselves are just basically taking different moments in time and just, let's say you can devote no more than maybe 5 minutes to this. What you do in those 5 minutes is just select a group of poses. From those poses, let's say you pick, I would suggest, if you guys are starting out, anywhere between 3 to 6. So you would take anywhere between 3 to 6 poses, randomly you find online, or even just things that come into your head. And what you're supposed to do is just, as quickly as you can, and let's say you're going to give yourselves about, starting out, let's say you give yourselves about 30 seconds for each pose. And let's say you're working on 4 poses at the start. Your objective within those 30 seconds is rather simple. Get the shape of the pose as close to the object that you found as humanly possible. So let's say, for example, you have a pose where all the person is doing is just standing there with their arm outstretched at a profile. So you would grab that profile, look at the image, and name you. Sometimes it helps to have the image right next to your drawing. Sometimes it helps you just to have it in front of you. But all you need to do is, let's say for me example, I usually do 5-second gestures. Like I do anywhere between 2 to 5 second gestures. So if I'm looking at that profile image of the person standing in front of me with their hands outstretched, and I just want to do a quick gesture, I would do this. And that's all I would do. I get the general pose, I get the general stance, and I get as much detail as I can. Now, if you want to go for a 10-second gesture, let's say the exact same gesture, I would go in and actually start first laying down the base details of it all in a little bit more of a quicker fashion, and then now that I have a little bit of extra time, I would kind of go in and start adding a little bit more details to what the thing is. For example, person's arm, actually throwing in their chest and all that other such. giving their legs more definition, giving their arms more definition. Let's say that they were actually holding something in the thing. Let's say they were actually wearing a hat of some sort. And then like that. And these are not supposed to be anywhere detailed. They're not supposed to be super complex. They're just meant to basically, essentially, train your hand to be able to do things that it wouldn't normally do. Exactly, Sea Artist. The main point is just get the pose down and do it as quickly as you can. That's why you usually give yourself either 5-second intervals, 10-second intervals, 30-second intervals, and you do that according to how many different gestures you're going to be doing. Before the stream started, actually, I went ahead and I actually started doing a couple of poses myself. As you can see, these are nowhere near detailed. They don't have much in terms of any type of recognition. They're just literally meant to basically grab the shape, grab the pose, keep going. I believe for these I did them in 5 to 10 seconds a piece. But it's mainly just meant to get your hand flowing, to kind of get yourself accustomed to different things. And at times you need visual aid, and for that there are many different websites you can use. Heck, just go to Google, go to Tumblr, at times even Twitter. DeviantArt is not a bad place. For Affinity you can get a lot of things from there as well. There's a lot of different places you can just search up random poses and actually be able to grab things from them. And in that same vein, you're able to actually use those things to kind of further express yourself. And at times, you're going to want to challenge yourself after, let's say, you do these 7, 8, 10 times, and you've already gotten to the point where you can dish out 5-second sketches like nothing. You would want to challenge yourself, so you would go almost into 2-second ones, which would basically look like you're just doing this. And that's it. Or this. And those are things that you're going to be doing. And the whole point of these gestures are so you can actually expand your hand's mobility. At first you're going to be like, okay, this, then that, then you're going to do something like this, or basically like that, and then just stretch it out, have the hand there, go with this one, get there. You're going to be very slow at first. And that's okay. Because later on, and the more you do it, this same thing that would have probably taken you 30 seconds, you'll be able to do just basically like this. And be done with it. And again, all of it's meant to do is just warm you up and be able to help you expand your hand's motion more. And that's why gestures are very, very important. They are meant to basically help you stretch your hand. It's meant to basically help you pretty much become faster and more fluid in your hand motion. Now, these actually get torn into something a little bit easier. Now, the gestures at times people use just again, like I mentioned, for warm-ups, but some people use them as dailies. And what dailies are essentially is a lot of artists tend to have quotas for each day, and that's like some people will say is like, oh, I gotta draw at least 10 images a day, or I gotta draw 5 images a day, or I gotta draw 20 images a day. And those are what their dailies are, and at times most of their dailies come from their gestures. They'll basically plan out, okay, I have 4 images that I need to do. The 4 images are, I need to draw a man sitting, I need to draw a guy running, I need to draw a person doing the Superman pose, and I need someone posing like, I don't know, they're just doing some kind of dynamic pose. So you would incorporate that into your gestures so you can use later on during the day. And how that works is, let's say for example, you're going to do the guy sitting down. So you would do your gestures like a guy just basically like a guy sitting down. Move on to the next one, a guy running. Another one, a guy doing the Superman pose. And the last one, which is essentially a guy doing some kind of weird dynamic pose, and you're just basically just doing things like that. And yes, Daisy, that is also very true. Some people actually only have one single daily, but those dailies are exuberantly detailed. And truth be told, dailies can go between from just having that one super detailed image to doing almost up onto terms of almost 100 images, depending on what the artist is doing. Some artists who are doing 2D animations, they'll be pumping out roughly 80 to 100 drawings a day. And that's kind of where this comes into play. The more you do these gestures, the more you basically practice them, the more you just basically finagle with them. It basically helps you expand more. As for how to basically gesture into a writing Drasvin, that would be more of like you just take moments in a day and writing small little descriptive practices, you writing small haikus, you doing like smaller paragraphs, and essentially building up your capability of expressing yourself in a lot more free form of way. It's a similar concept to the gestures. Basically, just type up sentences, and those sentences would later on become phrases, and those phrases would later on become paragraphs. And you'll be able to start expanding more and more and more that way, and that's how you would become more adept using the gestures when it comes to writing. Sculpting, for example. I've seen people basically sculpt things like basically they just put a little triangle, add little eyes to it, little tiny hands, and they get like a little cone Mr. Potato Head. And they do that for practice, because they do that to basically create a small little gesture for their character, or they just create a small little character as a form of a gesture to kind of get their hands working and their hands operational again. And that's the key point behind what these are. These are meant to basically help you get a better flow for your own style, get a better flow for your own work. They're not always going to be excruciatingly detailed, like you guys can see here. Most of these are extreme squiggles. And in truth, later on down the line, you're going to find that some of these you can even go back to and use them for different things. You can go back to and actually have revisits to the same poses. You could even go by and just revisit a thing, like for example, oh, I'm gonna need a character who's basically doing some kind of weird actiony pose. Oh, okay, I can use this one, and you would use this one to basically further your detailing into it and start like adding concepts around it. Like for example, let's say this guy is now robot dude right here. And there you go. And this is what these can be done with. These are some of the things that they can be useful for. Now, are they the only things that you can do with them? No. Are they the thing that I'm actually expressing right now? No. And here's the thing about this. The reason why I express these details to you guys today, in the way that I have, is simply because today I'm only just explaining the bare bone concepts behind what gestures are. Essentially giving you guys an introduction to different ideas to keep in mind when it comes to the artwork. And honestly, this is basically just the first step. And what makes this first step important is that you're basically just going to be looking at it, and some people will get it right away. Some people will need to hear it maybe once or twice, or even just experiment with them themselves to be able to understand it. But in truth, all of this is basically your starting step. And in truth, now having explained that, this will actually complete today's lesson. But before we finish today's lesson, I'm going to pose you all a little bit of homework. And I know the dreaded word, oh no, homework. He's going to make us work. Oh no! Guys, come on. It ain't that bad. The homework, whether you choose to accept it or not, and again, completely optional here, guys, I would say try and do anywhere between 3 to 6 different gestures every day. You don't have to spend much time on them. Honestly, all you would really need to do is just, do 3 this day, 4 next day. Do 6 over here because you have the day off. Or if you want to, go further. Do 10, 20 if you want to. But try them. And don't spend so much time. You know what? For the record, try and limit yourself to 5 seconds and 10-second ones. If you want one day, do 3 10-second ones. Okay, next day you want to do 6 5-second ones. And do it that way. At first, you're not going to get much. I can say from my own personal experience, you're not going to get that much. But as you go on, trust me, you're going to be knocking out 6 in a manner of like, you'll be done with 6 by the time 10 seconds hit. And again, remember, the key point of these gestures are not very detailed, can be super simplistic, stick figures are fine, mass squiggles are fine. It's all perfectly fine. The main point of it all is to basically get yourself as close to the picture that you actually found in terms of how the picture looks in the pose, and that's all there is to it. If you guys are willing to take this up, I would say do it for... You know what? Why not? Go for it at least for a week if you choose to take up this challenge. Go a week doing nothing more than just 3 to 6 gestures every day. And that's it. Just 3 very quick gestures. Probably will take you no more than maybe 2 minutes if you're having trouble finding the images on Google. To essentially just... That's it. Just do 3 today, 4 tomorrow, 3 again the next day. Oh, you want to do 6 today because you have a lot more time? By all means. Now, if you ever want to contact me, you can send me a message via Discord. If you ever want to try and pretty much do whatever, you can always find me on Discord at any given point in time. I actually always have it on me. I have it registered on my phone, so at any time anyone wants to basically PM me for anything, you can always have it there. If you actually want, you can also send me a message on Twitter. You can also send me a message on pretty much any major any art site, like DeviantArt I'm on. I'm also on for Affinity. I am on Tumblr. Find me in those places, and by all means you can do it. And just contact me telling me, hey, I want to do this today, or hey, I want to show you these to see what you think. By all means do so. I might not answer right away, because sadly I do work throughout the majority of the week, and at times I'm very, very busy. And yes, I'm also on Twitter as well. But feel free to send me what you guys got, and I'll review it with you guys. I'll give you some extra pointers if you need to. But these are very simplistic, and the whole point of them is to basically give you a little bit of extra mobility with your hand. Because like I mentioned, at the start, yeah, you're going to be timing yourself trying to do them 10 seconds, and then you realize that by the time 10 seconds hits, you've already only just got the hand and the arm. And that's normal. That's going to happen at the start. But don't let that thing don't let yourself get shied off just because of that. Motivate yourselves, and you're going to see that soon enough you'll be knocking out 10 to 5 second ones like nothing. So, in that statement, and with that said, this will conclude today's art lesson. Once again, if you guys need to find me, I will be sending links to my Patreon, where I will be posting the link to download the raw recording of this lesson. I will also be posting links to my Twitter, as well as my Fur Affinity and DeviantArt, and also my Twitter. So if you guys ever need to contact me, feel free to contact me in any of those places. And I will also drop a link to my Discord so you guys can find me there, friend me on Discord, whatever you so wish. Anytime you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me, get in touch, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. Till the next lesson, guys!